think we're like, yeah. All right, we're good. All right, hey, we're back. Week 8, fantasy football season. Week 8, we're reaching that 50% of the season mark. Kind of feels like I was just watching Hard Knocks, talking shit about the Buffalo Bills. And here,
Whoa,
and
whoa,
here,
whoa.
and here, I'm not a huge Bills fan. I don't like the Bills. I like Josh Allen. I think the Bills are the most fake fan base in the NFL. But that's a different conversation. But we're here tonight to talk about those players that you need to pick up. Right, we're kind of getting to the point where we have an idea of what our teams are going to be. If we're going for a championship. But if you're sitting at a 3-4 mark, a 4-3, a 5-2, looking to bolster your team a little bit. There's some value out there right now. NFL teams are kind of performing how they probably will the rest of the year. We have an idea of what players are going to be, especially with all the injuries. But Ashton, I think what's most noted this week is people are calling it bye-pocalypse, right? 6 teams on
Yep.
bye, tons of fantasy players on bye. So if you're in a situation where you need to pick up someone, you need to start them this week. Maybe just need to get through a week. We have a couple options here for you. Maybe you pick up a guy and you're like, I kind of like how this guy is performing. Maybe insert him into your lineup and then you can kind of ride him a little bit. But I guess real quick, we'll riff like we usually do off the bat here. How was the week for you? Anything notable? Anything you want to brag about? Kind of odd football week, but I don't know. You got anything to start us off here, Ashton?
Yeah. Didn't really have DFS was kind of weird this week. It was the first week we've had in a couple weeks, and especially in cash, where there was only the running back plays were real sketchy. Everybody was playing some combination of Brees Hall, Javonte Williams,
Yeah,
Jonathan Taylor, or Bill. I ended up going with Hall, Williams, and Bill. And that's kind of what cost me a lot of games in cash because what my opponents brought was JT, and instead of playing Bill in the flex, they dropped down to Zach Ertz with the money they needed for Jonathan Taylor. Gonna happen like that. I try not to play 2 tight ends ever in DFS if I can help it, but this is just one of the weeks where it was you can make it fit. Gambling wise, I don't have any huge wins to speak about. I did hit I think it was 3 different parlays that were plus 1,000 or more Thursday night. I know it was one on football, and no, it was 2, and I was one leg away on the third one. It was I know I hit a one on football, one on the baseball game.
nice.
Yeah, I've had a pretty good little run here. I'm down. I'm positive at least no less than like 2 units every day except for Sunday since a week from it's literally in the last 7 days. So opening night of NBA doesn't look like it's going to be too kind to me tonight, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just been same old, same old. We had a first round of regional tournament in soccer tonight, so I went to go cover local team girls soccer. And if you've ever been to a high school girls soccer game, you get it. They get after it, and they are out there throwing their body around. So
Yeah.
it was a really scrappy game, and good guys came out on top, so they're back at it Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's just get right into the first question right away. Z Smitty, welcome in. I'm happy to have you, brother. Rest of the season, would you rather start Jackson Dart or Justin Herbert? Kind of 2 quarterbacks who are in interesting spots, right? Jackson Dart is probably no. Here I'm backtracking. Probably front runner for Rookie of the Year. I would say.
Yeah, Luka's kind of cooled off a little bit, so I think he's kind of maybe supplanting him a little.
Right, but he's kind of steering, the Giants in a direction that it feels like they haven't really, had a direction right since those good Eli Manning days. Not saying that the Giants are a contender or anything, but it kind of feels like they have something going on now, right at the quarterback position. Against Justin Herbert again, who we're both big Justin Herbert fans. I love to see what Justin Herbert on the field all the time. To me, right, this really comes down to it feels like both these teams are not necessarily teams that are going to come out and smoke other teams. It feels like a lot of these teams, either of these are playing from behind. I think you kind of you're kind of balancing the act of Jackson Dart's rushing upside versus Justin Herbert probably provides a little bit more in the passing game. For me, at least, I think this is still Justin Herbert moving forward. I think the weapons around him are a little bit better. I think the Chargers are probably in position where they can run. I've talked about before that I don't really believe in these Chargers running backs. I think if the Chargers want to win games, it's going to have to be on the arm of Justin Herbert. I like Jackson Dart. I think he's a fun player to watch. Are you putting like a ton of trust into a rookie? I know we kind of saw what Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud have done, but that's like right two of the greatest rookie seasons ever. It kind of feels like at some point Jackson Dart is is going to continue to cool off a little bit. Teams can get some film on him and kind of game plan around him. I don't know. It just feels like the weapons on Herbert's side kind of give me the favor in his way.
I think Fields I did the same thing. I think Justin Herbert definitely has the better weapons, like you said. One thing I will note, since he's took over the job from Russell Wilson in Week 4, the only quarterbacks that are averaging more fantasy points per game are Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Bo Nix. Surprisingly, so that's pretty good company to be in. Especially he's averaging like just under 23 points a game. He's scrambling at a crazy high rate. Like his scramble rate is over 12%. And he's averaging almost 9 carries a game. So that's going to give him a really good floor. But I think that one's just kind of pick your poison. If you think that Herbert's just got better weapons, you think he might get in more shootout territory because the Giants' defense is better, go with Herbert. I'm not going to fault you for having Dart. Maybe you have both of them and you just play whoever's got a better matchup that week.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
That's a viable strategy too if you can stand having two quarterbacks. That's probably what I would do is just see if I couldn't hold on to both and just play the matchup game.
Yeah, and it looks like somebody's coming in. So we'll get back to the question before this, but rank these waiver wire pickups: Dart, Wan'Dale Robinson, Tez Johnson. It sounds like he's got Bo Nix here too on his waiver wire. That's kind of interesting. It's a 10-man league, standard PPR for everyone listening. And if anyone else is watching, drop some questions in the chat. We're here to answer. We're here to talk some ball before the week really kicks up here. We're here to help you make those game-changing decisions right before the week really starts. But let's break this down. Let's go one by one here. He has a bid in for Jackson Dart, but he's debating if he'd rather put the bid in for Tez Johnson, who I'm a Tez Johnson guy. I love Tez Johnson. Herbert is currently starting for him, but he doesn't want to miss out on a big-time quarterback potentially. So then he's like I said before, rank the waiver wire pickups: Dart, Wan'Dale Robinson, Tez Johnson. Let's start with this. So in my mind, with Justin Herbert, how much? I guess the question here is how much more value? How many more points? What's the difference between a Justin Herbert and a Jackson Dart on any given week? Would you consider Jackson Dart a big time quarterback that you can pick up and immediately is he going to be the quarterback in your championship winning team? That's how I kind of like to look at fantasy football. When you picture a championship winning team, who is a quarterback? To me, it still feels like Justin Herbert. But when we're ranking these waiver wire pickups, it just feels like there's so many. Tampa is such in a weird position, right? Mike Evans goes down, Chris Godwin is injured. Mecca Buka didn't look, like we saw Mecca Buka to start the year. There's some injuries. Tez Johnson is obviously the next guy up here, and I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks he's kind of proven that. Like to me, if I don't absolutely need Jackson Dart, I'm ranking Tez Johnson ahead of him for a waiver wire pickup this week.
Yeah, I think of this 3-pack of players, I think Dart's probably at the bottom if you have Herbert, just because Herbert's kind of playing out of his mind right now. I mean, he's QB7 on the year. There's not really a reason to replace him. I get not wanting to lose out on a big time kind of quarterback the way he put it. And a lot of that might be inflated because he did have 55 attempts this week. They were kind of in catch-up mode the whole game against the Colts because Jonathan Taylor was just God, he's so good. He was just crushing them the entire game. Herbert does have Minnesota this week. Their defense can be kind of tough sometimes, but then he gets the Titans, the Steelers, and the Jaguars. Those are all like fairly good matchups. I think Pittsburgh, they just got shredded by Joe Flacco of all people on Thursday night. Jacksonville, they're kind of questionable sometimes. I think defensively, I think you can kind of get on them a little bit. And then he has the bye week, but after the bye, he comes out in fantasy playoff mode with Vegas, Philly, Kansas City, Dallas, and then Houston week 17, and then Denver week 18. So probably inconsequential week 18. But that run in the fantasy championships right there from Las Vegas to Philly, KC's kind of could be rough game. Mm-hmm. But then Dallas after that. I mean, week 16, Dallas Cowboys, that's if you're playing 2-week playoffs, probably the first week of your championship, or it could be your semifinals. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Herbert went for 404 against the Cowboys if, the way that those two offenses have been playing. So I'd probably stick with Herbert. Me personally, I think between Wan'Dale and Tez Johnson, I think Wan'Dale's role, at least before, it's been floated the Giants might trade for a wide receiver. We can't, speculate on that too much. But At this juncture, I think I'd rather have Wan'Dale just because I think his role is better. Tez Johnson, he was undrafted, right? Undrafted rookie for the Bucks. So, he's playing good right now, and he's kind of getting on the field because they don't really have anybody else to put out there, which, it's basically the same argument I just made for Wan'Dale. I just think that, I don't know, man. Something about Wan'Dale that I like as a player. Not that I don't like Tez Johnson.
I think he's a great player too. I agree.
I just, I think that his role is probably a little bit safer than Tez Johnson. Because Sterling Shepard's still there. I think Sterling Shepard's still going to run over him. When Godwin comes back, he's going to instantly be over him.
Yeah.
So that automatically makes him the wide receiver 3, probably rotating with, Cameron Johnson, who I've literally never heard of before last week. Mm-hmm. So I think for the sake of season long, I'd probably have Wan'Dale, but I think Tez is definitely a good stash to have if you can manage to pick up both.
Yeah, it almost feels like too, like if you're in like desperate need, like you need someone to, be in and start right away. Like Tez Johnson feels like the pick over Wan'Dale Robinson here. I just believe in this Tampa Bay team. I think, and of course injuries happen. I think Tampa is one of the better teams in the NFC. I think they can compete for the NFC Championship. And I think Baker is playing like a top 5 quarterback this year. He's probably a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. So I guess in the short term, Tez. In the long term, I don't hate that out of Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Because he is wide receiver 1 in New York. And I don't think Tez Johnson can ever say that he's going to be wide receiver 1 in Tampa Bay.
Not this year, at least.
Yeah. So then Smitty is going to bring in a factor into this, an outside factor. Bo Nix. Bo Nix is on his waiver wire as well, which is kind of interesting. Because Bo Nix is, he's a good player. Talking about Oregon teammates here with Bo Nix and Tez Johnson. He's been a good, he's a fine player. He hasn't really lived up to, he's been, people were drafting him, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Now I know he had that huge fourth quarter last week that kind of feels like, this is what I drafted Bo Nix to be. Are you reading into like, this is what this Denver offense is. This is what I want Bo Nix to be. This is what he was last year. Or do you think it's kind of more towards what we've seen, to kind of start the year, where it's a good player. It's just not a guy who is going out and getting you 40 points at the quarterback position. With that being said, how much when you factor in Bo Nix into this 3 quarterback conversation we're having here, to me, it feels like Bo Nix is at the bottom of these 3. Not that he's a bad player or anything. Not that he's worse than Jackson Dart. But in terms of fantasy, I think when you're stacking these 3 up, I think Bo Nix has the lowest scoring output on any given week.
Yeah, I like to think of this when you've all got guys that are kind of close like this. I kind of like to think about the situation around them, right? Like I think Bo Nix has probably got the 2nd, maybe 3rd best wide receiver, probably 2nd. I think Ladd McConkey's probably a little bit better than Cortland Sutton, but Herbert's got the best weapons. I think Bo Nix has still got okay weapons. The only thing that worries me about Bo Nix is the Denver defense is obviously so good. Nick Bonito is playing like his hair is on fire. That guy's. I wish I would have been in the know because I know there's a couple people in the industry that have Nick Bonito like Defensive Player of the Year tickets at like 300 to 1 or something crazy like that, which looks great right now. I just think that there's going to be games in here where, like, especially against like the Houston Texans in 2 weeks, where I could see that game just turning into like a defensive like slog, like 16-9, because neither offense can move the ball on the other team's defense. He does get some easy matchups in here with Dallas this week and then the Raiders in 3 weeks. I just think, after looking at Herbert's schedule, man, his schedule is just so good in the fantasy playoffs. Like Bo Nix gets a pretty good one after the bye. I think it's the same bye week 12. He gets the Commies, Raiders, Pack, and Jaguars. So I think Herbert's is a little bit better, but those first 2 against the Commies and the Raiders is definitely some pretty good matchups, pretty juicy.
Yeah, and you bringing that up kind of sways my opinion here with Smitty's last one of, Dart or Nix the rest of the season. That makes me want to go Nix, just hearing that schedule moving forward. Like, again, when that week 16 comes around and you're alive in the semifinals, Smitty, you're playing Justin Herbert against Dallas, right? And I think at that point, you're just going to continue to ride Justin Herbert after seeing that, because it's hard to, sit a guy after he gives you a semifinal win. I'm going into a championship. But that schedule for Bo Nix is tasty. And again, I like Jackson Dart. I think that teams at some point, figure out that maybe we can't let this guy play backyard football and just let him run around. Maybe we just send 6 guys at him the entire game,
For what it's worth, Dart's bye week is week 14, so that's probably going to be the beginning of your playoffs. That really sucks.
Yeah.
So if you're not looking like you're going to get a bye that first week, some leagues do buys, some leagues don't. I can never keep track of who does what in their leagues. Everybody's league's so different, but that might factor into your decision a little bit, where if you think you can live without Jackson Dart for a week in the fantasy playoffs of all places when they're going home, he gets Washington out of the bye, Minnesota. Week 16, Brian Flores defense is not something I want to dial up for Jackson Dart, that's for sure.
Yep.
Then he gets the Raiders after that, then the Cowboys in Week 18, which obviously Week 18 for the purposes of most people's fantasy seasons doesn't really matter. But, yeah, that's now that I'm looking at Dart, I'd probably lean Knicks because, yes, while that Week 15 matchup against the Commanders is really good, I am terrified of a Brian Flores defense against a rookie quarterback, especially one like Jackson Dart, who's kind of like Gruden said, he's just he's a madman out there. He's Evel Knievel, I think is what he called him in his Gruden's QB camp episode. So I think his floor is still going to be good from a fantasy perspective because he just runs so much. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to leave that game if, maybe Jackson Dart gets you a rushing touchdown, but he puts up 12 points because he threw for 180 yards and 2 interceptions, something like that. So
yeah, I think this is close. I just the schedule alone, I think I give the edge to Bo Nix there. But I think Herbert reigns above both of them, and Smitty kind of sounds like that you're looking for a quarterback to pick up here between Dart and Nix. I think Nix is a guy, but Dart is not crazy.
If it's a question of priority, I'd probably just use it on Wan'Dale personally. That's just me, though.
Yeah, I would use it on a position player before a quarterback because I think you're fine with Herbert moving forward. Let's hit another quarterback here, a guy that I love, a guy we talked about last week. It's Aaron Rodgers, the only quarterback this year with multiple 4 touchdown pass games. That's where his value is coming this year. It's in touchdown passes, and that's kind of, that's not the out of the ordinary for Aaron Rodgers. He's never been a huge yardage guy. He's been more of a touchdown guy, and we're kind of seeing that with this Pittsburgh offense. Putting up 4 touchdowns against the Bengals last week. This is an interesting week, right? Because he gets he's as big of a revenge game as there is in the NFL this year. With Green Bay coming to Pittsburgh, feels like Rodgers is kind of charged up for this game. I think Green Bay is a team that you can pass on. I think they're better against the run than they are against the pass. And I think what Green Bay has kind of been hurt on this year is teams just taking those underneath routes and kind of, dinking and dunking their way down the field. I think Rodgers can do that the entire game and set up a DK Metcalf post route or a goal route or something like that. So I'm in on Rodgers this week. I like him. I think there's other quarterbacks I like more, but I don't think that you start Rodgers and he gives you a bad week this week.
Yeah, I think you could definitely do worse than Aaron Rodgers. Like you said, DK Metcalf, he's doing a really good job this year. They've kind of been Arthur Smith as well has been doing a really good job of just kind of getting the ball in his hands underneath and letting the big dog go run to the end zone. But that's the one thing, people always rag on Arthur Smith for his personnel decisions and stuff like that on offense. But the one person that doesn't affect is the quarterback. So who cares if we're getting touchdowns to Casey Hayward or Darnell Washington or, the third string running back or whatever Arthur Smith cooks up in his mind, because Aaron Rodgers is going to be one getting points for it too. So I think he's a pretty safe play floor wise this week, unless Michael Parsons really just gets after him. But, outside of just Michael Parsons absolutely taking over the game, I think you can count on at least 15 or 16 points from Rodgers.
Yep. Jason Ortiz in the chat. Shout out Jason. He's got a couple of questions. I'm not going to put them all up because they're all asking the same thing. Just different guys to drop. So he's wondering if there's drop Joe Mixon, Mike Evans, who might be back for fantasy playoffs. I don't think that he's going to be. Hunter Henry for Tyrone Tracy, Kyle Munagai, Brashard Smith, or Tez Johnson. He's also asking if you should drop Nick Chubb / Cooper Kupp for any of those guys, or Brandon Ayuk, Harold Fannin for any of those guys. If you're asking me if you should drop Mixon, Evans, Chubb, Kupp, Ayuk, or Fannin, I'm dropping Mixon. I don't know that there's a world where Mixon comes back and plays and is very effective this year. I think you're holding on to something that's not really going to hit this year. I don't think Houston is kind of in a position where they can really lean on a run here. So if you're really, Jason, if you're really enamored by Tyrone Tracy, Kyle Monagai, Brashard Smith, Tez Johnson, I would drop Joe Mixon for him. I see you have Mooney. Mooney is the guy that I would drop him for. Ashley, maybe you can speak a little bit more to it. I've always been a Darnell Mooney guy. I think he's awesome. I think the Falcons have a great week this week. I think Mooney's kind of a part of that. So he's the guy that I want more than Brashard Smith that is really only going to get passing work. Guys like, I guess we kind of talked about Tez Johnson, but who we don't really know what that role is come the fantasy football playoffs, right?
Yeah, I think Mooney is probably your priority ad this week. I probably wouldn't stone cold drop Evans. If you have an IR spot, I'd throw him in there just in case. Maybe if he comes back week 16, he helps you out. Who knows? Evans is one of those guys that can always go for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, just kind of out of nowhere. Other than that, pretty much everyone on that drop list, I think in my mind, I'm like, I'd probably drop them.
Yeah, right.
I don't remember the whole list offhand, but most of those guys I can confidently say I'm probably dropping. Outside of Harold Fannin, obviously, because especially with Njoku Hart, like it was a weird game environment this week. I don't know why. So I've been tinkering with a betting model, and for some reason my model spit Dolphins spread out at me, and I should have clocked it immediately and said, no, this is a bad decision. But I wasn't using my brain, and I decided back to turn the ball over with like 60-mile-an-hour winds. So that one's on me. Got to do better there. Yeah, Mooney, I think this week's going to be interesting for sure because they're talking about Michael Penix is going to miss the game, so that would fire up Kirk Cousins. Atlanta's O-line's quietly been playing really good. They're allowing the lowest pressure rate in the league, and the Dolphins can't get pressure anyway. I mean, they played the Chargers 2 weeks ago, and with both starting tackles out, couldn't even sniff Justin Herbert. So I think that this is a week, and as we all know, if you can give Kirk Cousins a clean pocket, he's going to pick you apart all day long. So I think this is a week where you can comfortably fire up your Falcons. If memory serves me right, last year before the Falcons made the switch to Penix from Kirk, Mooney kind of ate with Kirk a lot more early in the year, and it was kind of Drake London who was struggling a little bit with Kirk Cousins. And I think that maybe kind of speaks to a play style perspective because Penix to me is more of a guy who's just going to fire it in there and let Drake London win those one-on-one battles in the boundary, whereas Cousins is going to make more kind of anticipatory and kind of window throws that maybe Penix isn't seeing yet because he's only played like 8 or 9 games. So I think this is a big week for the Moondog, possibly. I wouldn't expect Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase level performance or anything like that, but I think you can comfortably throw them in your lineup, and they're going to be playing against a bad Miami team. It's getting late early for the Dolphins. Sorry if there's any Dolphins fans out there. I don't envy you guys for sure. I think the only team that might have it worse is the Titans. So
yeah,
Raiders, I guess Raiders arguably, but those 3 teams definitely got the worst in the league this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like I said, I think if Penix plays, I think Penix is a great pickup this week. To your point, Kirk Cousins plays. Kirk Cousins is a great pickup this week. Not that they're the same player or anything, but Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney kind of reminds me a little bit because I saw it so much when they were in Minnesota together. Kind of a Kirk Cousins, Stephon Diggs kind of thing going on. With Adam Thielen kind of resembling a much smaller but a similar player to Drake London as well. That's kind of an interesting that I just made that up. Maybe it's probably a reach that I'm talking about it right now. But it's an interesting thought. I agree with you 100%. Load up your Falcons. This feels like if Falcons win by 3 or more scores. I don't know that Mike McDaniels makes it back to Miami. The Dolphins are dead. It's been said that defense sucks. I like Devon Achane, but I don't really like Tua. There's not much on that offense that really scares you. So yeah, I'm with you. Start your Falcons this week. And I was going to bring up Michael Penix. We kind of mentioned him. But Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins, like I said, whoever starts, I think is worth a pickup and worth a start if you absolutely need to, right? Because Miami's just been kind of getting shredded for the past. The last guy let's talk about is Joe Flacco. Any strong thoughts on Joe Flacco? Like came out and kind of like you mentioned off the rip, kind of ripped that Steelers defense. I don't know. Again, like if you're in a deep league and you need something, you can do worse than Joe Flacco. It's not anyone I'm going out to put major fab on. I'm not putting a priority on it. I think it's a guy that you can pick up if you need a spot start Saturday night. But I think you can do worse than Flacco. I just don't know that Flacco is going to give you 30 points and give you an automatic win.
Yeah, I mean they're playing the Jets, and that's a team I left out that's got it just awful right now. Did you see Woody Johnson's Jets owner Woody Johnson's comments on Justin Fields today after they officially benched him for Tyrod?
I did not.
Oh, it was pretty rough. He pretty much said that you can't blame Aaron Glenn because I don't think there's a coach in the league that could win with a quarterback like that. And I'm just sitting here like, buddy, you're the one that opened your big old wallet and said, hey, I'm going to give you 30 million reasons to come play football for me. So I don't see how you're kind of clowning him like that. But that's not who we're talking about here. Yeah, Flacco, he's got back-to-back probably great matchups against the Jets and the Bears. it was so like I was glad that I was on Bengals Thursday night because it was so from a Steelers fan perspective, and I do have a couple of Steelers fan friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was let's make Jamar Chase run a short shallow cross, get the ball in his hands, and we're going to basically it's going to be a de facto screen onto the other side of the field, and it worked every time. And I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at Mike Tomlin, and I'm just like, dude, at some point you've got to figure out how to stop this. Like this is not anything crazy. This is Pee Wee level. We're just going to get the ball in our best players' hands and hope something good happens, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I've always said you win sports by giving the ball to your best player and just letting them do whatever they need to do. If Joe Flacco continues to just throw the ball to Jamar Chase every single play, then I love Joe Flacco moving forward, right? But to your point, at some point you like maybe we should give a little extra eyes on Jamar Chase, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. But with that said, you have T. Higgins on the other side. Noah Fant's been playing good football lately. Chase Brown kind of got going a little bit last week. Not that he's anything crazy, but like. Right, we've always talked about this Bengals offense being like there are weapons, right? Someone's always going to see number 2 coverage between Chase and Higgins, probably going to be Higgins, and the middle of the field is always going to be open just because there's so much on the outside. So yeah, like the weapons are there for Flacco. It's just not very exciting. It's not very sexy. Again, if you need a spot start, I don't hate Flacco. Going into the running back position, we have Tajay. We've kind of talked about this Titans running back room this year a little bit. Again, nothing, this is not the sexiest thing that you're ever going to see. I don't necessarily know that it's worth a priority. I don't necessarily know it's worth anything more than $2 or $3 in fab unless you're absolutely desperate at the running back position. But Tajay Spears felt like the receiving guy. He ran a lot last week. Like he's a guy who's going to be on the field, and if you need, fill-in running back, like it's fine. I don't know that Tajay Spears is ever going to go out and be like, hey, look at me, I'm getting 150 yards and a touchdown and helping you win your week. But again, if you need, especially with 6 teams on bye, if you need a spot start, I guess it's fine. I don't love it. I'm not putting a bid in on him. I'm not putting a bid on. I guess we can talk about it both either. Kyle Mungai either. It just feels like that there are 2 running backs who are going to see time on the field. They're just never going to see that number 1 time, right?
Yeah, it could be. To me, I think there's an opportunity for Tajay Spears to kind of overtake Pollard just because if you're the Titans, what else do you have to lose at this point? I mean, might as well see what you got in the young guy. Opportunities were pretty close last week. I mean, Pollard did play a little bit more snaps. It was pretty close, 43% snap share, but Pollard got 12 touches, 12 looks, and Tajay Spears got 9. So still pretty close on the looks as well. So that is kind of swinging to a more even kind of split versus Pollard being kind of like this workhorse back. It looks like that's exactly their split the last 2 weeks. Against the Raiders, it was the exact same. Tajay played more snaps, but it was the split as far as touches goes. It was the exact same, 12-9. So, I'm probably not falling over myself to pick up either of these guys. I can't even say that I like Kyle Mungai because I was the one in Dynasty draft season saying I'm not going to scout this guy with this name I can't pronounce from Rutgers of all places. But as soon as he got drafted to the Bears, I was kind of like, well, maybe I need to take note because I, for one, have never thought DeAndre Swift was a quality running back, period. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so the Bears are obviously going to have to score points. If DeAndre Swift is kind of like pooping his pants like halfway through the year, maybe they start giving more touches to Kyle Mungai because, Ben Johnson decides I need a competent running back. And, I guess the kind of talk now is or at least the wish casting is that he'll be kind of the David Montgomery element to Swift's Jahmyr Gibbs element. I don't know if I'd go that far with it. This one could just be because they were, pretty much just kind of winning the whole game.
Right.
16 touches is nothing to sneeze at, obviously, but if games remain competitive going forward, I probably wouldn't expect to see him and Swift being that close as far as work share goes.
Yeah, I do think that these are 2 guys too, where if you have fringe guys who aren't really doing much for you, maybe like if you're in Jason's case where you're hanging on to a Joe Mixon or a Brandon Ayuk, and kind of feels like those guys are dead. Like when's the last time you heard anything about either of those guys? Like if you want to pick up guys who have an opportunity to get opportunities, I don't hate dropping those guys for him. It just, like you said, I'm not fumbling. I'm not, running, to the podium and going to get these guys. To your point, they're on the field. I mean, that's more than you can say about a lot of other people in the NFL. So if you're desperate,
For what it's worth, like spot start wise, like if you're just looking for somebody to fill in maybe like 1 week, maybe you're in that apocalypse mess and you've got, one or two of your starting running backs on bye week. See if Tyler Algier is on your waivers, because the Falcons, for whatever reason, like to split their work, especially, he even gets like the majority of the carries inside the 10-yard line, and the Dolphins run defense in general is bad. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if this is a week where Tyler Algier pops up for, 8 carries for like 20 yards and a score, maybe 2, and, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a usable week if you've got, 2 guys on bye that you've really been counting on this year.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Going to receivers, we talked about Darnell Mooney. Let's go into Xavier Legette, who, is kind of, doing a little bit of not a 180, I'll say more of like a 72-degree turn on it, where I'm not fully there yet. But even with Jalen Coker's return, Xavier Legette kind of showed that, hey, I'm still here. I can still catch passes. I still catch touchdowns. We're without Bryce Young. We're getting Andy Dalton. So that's probably a boost to the Panthers wide receiver room in the short term, right? So, 15 total targets over first 2 weeks. That's kind of turned into, 11 targets last week with 57 snaps. Again, there's opportunity there. I think Xavier Legette is like at this point, he's kind of a very low end flex. If you have to play him, fine. I'm not super excited about playing him. But 11 targets with Bryce Young, you would imagine that. I think that probably evens out among the staff with Andy Dalton at quarterback. But I think those opportunities that I get are probably a little bit more impactful, right? Those targets are probably a little bit more on the money. It's probably a little bit more in situations where Legette is going to succeed. So,
yeah, and I kind of talked about this. This was my kind of like thought process. I went out and bought, I think it was just one dynasty league where I'm kind of needed to redo my team, and I was like, I'm gonna go out and buy every second, third year wide receiver that is probably cheaper than when they were drafted that I can. And he was one of them that I went out and snagged for what was probably a slight overpay. I don't even remember what the trade was now off the top of my head, but I know I didn't give up just a ton for him. And to be clear, I did not like Xavier Legette as a prospect. I thought he was terrible, but in my mind, I was like, wide receivers break out their second and third years all the time. Just because I didn't think he was good as a prospect doesn't mean that I can't be wrong, because I've been wrong plenty of times in my life. And, he popped up for a random 11-target game here. I even kind of joked because me and one of my good friends I played Dynasty with, we kind of had the argument where, the whole thing with the Commanders wide receiver room being absolutely decimated happened. And, they signed Traylon Burks to the practice squad. And I instantly was just like, dude, no, he's not going to just walk in the building and be a significant contributor for them. We argued about it for a little bit, and then I think I got him when I referred to him as Xavier Legette Light. So that was a good conversation. That was a good one by me. Yeah, I think that Legette, he's kind of like, if you want to compare him stylistically, I think he's just kind of tall Debo in a sense. I think Debo is obviously a better player, probably a better wide receiver, but just kind of get him the ball around the line of scrimmage, get the ball in his hands, and let him just kind of be athletic and go run. I don't think he's going to do good things for you from a technical standpoint, but if you just let him be an athlete, maybe you do these things where you run Tate McMillan down the field, or you run Jalen Coker down the field, or hell, even Legette down the field. He's a big guy. He can probably I know he can get after it. He's quick, fast, not quick, but I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do in an offense with him as your kind of off the line of scrimmage guy, and letting Tet just kind of be that alpha dog on the boundary by himself. But I'm interested to see how sticky this is, because it was the Jets, and the Jets are god awful. Doesn't get any easier with Buffalo and Green Bay back to back. Then he gets the Saints, the Falcons, 49ers, Rams. Absolutely brutal schedule through there. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know. I kind of want to see if that usage kind of holds up, because even if he doesn't catch 9 passes for 92 yards and a touchdown again, he's playing pretty much all the snaps. He's out there on the field. Is the Panthers offense good? Not particularly, but maybe Andy Dalton kind of brings some life to him.
Yeah. A guy I like a little bit more in Henry's article here, and everyone FloridaSports.org. Henry's got an article every week of the guys you should be looking at picking up. Put that out Tuesday morning, so you get all day to put those waivers in. Hopefully you pick them up Wednesday, Tuesday morning, whenever your waivers go through. I like Alec Pierce a little bit more. I'm an Alec Pierce guy. I think he's one of the better deep threats in the NFL that doesn't really get the shine for what he does. No, I like him a lot more with Anthony Richardson. But even with Daniel Jones, he's been on the field, running those go routes, those post routes. He feels like a guy on any given week who's going to give you, 3 to 4 receptions for 60 yards. And I don't think he's, I would never project him to score a touchdown, right? But I think given the state of this offense with the Indianapolis Colts, they need that deep threat, right? To open up those Tyler Warren drag routes where you just get him the ball and let him move. To get Jonathan Taylor, get linebackers' eyes off of Jonathan Taylor, get safety's eyes off of Jonathan Taylor. And even for Josh Downs to work his underneath stuff. Now, with Josh Downs being hurt, that's kind of given a boost to Alec Pierce. Josh Downs is going to come back at some point, right? But I think Alec Pierce has a solidified spot in this offense. And as it stands, this Indianapolis Colts is one of the better offenses in NFL history. Based on efficiency. So I really like Alec Pierce. I think he's a very fun, high risk, high reward play where if you need a flex or maybe if you're even in a 3 receiver league where you need maybe a 1 catch, 2 catch for 50 yards and a touchdown. I think Alec Pierce is as good of a player to do that as anyone in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. I think, for Pierce, I think he needs to be sending A.D. Mitchell a Christmas card every year for the rest of his life, no matter what. Because if it wasn't for A.D. Mitchell kind of essentially losing the Colts the game against the Cardinals, I don't think Alec Pierce kind of pops up with this great role this week. I mean, he saw 10 targets, 5 catches, 98 yards. And part of that might just be that, the Chargers are absolutely dunking on the Chargers, or that the Colts are absolutely dunking on the Chargers down the field. Gets Tennessee this week, then he comes back with Pittsburgh next week. I think those are both exploitable matchups, especially. You kind of got to wonder, though, if Tennessee, if they might just be able to just hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor 20 times, let him go for 200 and call it a day. That said, the Titans do have probably the best D tackle in the NFL, so I wouldn't just be certain that they can just slam Jonathan Taylor up the middle 20 times and go home with an easy win. Pierce, though, I think you clocked it pretty well. He's a deep threat. He's going to be down the field. He's going to be running the clear outs for all these guys in the RPO game, like Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren and all those guys underneath. So, but, like you kind of said, he can kind of get you there. He can kind of get you what you need in just 1 or 2 catches on the week, especially if he's hitting deep shots. So I don't mind him as kind of like a boom bust kind of flex play. If you throw him out there, you got to understand he might only get you 2 points, but he could go out there and get you 18 or 20.
Yeah, he's a guy, too, that I feel like, and I haven't played much DFS this year, I feel like he's probably around that base salary that, is worth at least a look at if you're putting money elsewhere. I like Alec Pierce a lot. I think the Colts kind of kicked the shit out of the Titans this week, which I also like the Titans this week for that reason because I think they play from behind the whole game. I think Cam Ward has a solid week this week, but that's a different conversation. But talking about tight ends, Mason Taylor is the first one that kind of pops up at this point in the season. It's like, right, if you're streaming tight ends, you're kind of looking for the guy who's at least on the field, and maybe who has those those pass catching opportunities. Tyrod Taylor is going to start for the Jets, like we talked about. I mean, that's such a big. It's crazy to say that's such a big upgrade, but Justin Fields is just not an NFL passer. But it's such an upgrade for this Jets receiving core. Mason Taylor has played over 80% of the Jets snaps in 5 of the last 7 games. Last 5 weeks, he has 6 plus 7 is 13, 13 plus 12 is 25, 26, 31 targets over 5 weeks, which, 6 a week, a little more than 6 a week is as good as you're going to find on the waiver wire for a tight end. I think if you're really in desperate need, or not in desperate need, but if you have like a Sam Laporta who's on by, maybe you've been trying to, you've been doing the Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer kind of dance with the Raiders who are on by. Trey McBride who's on by. I mean, Mason Taylor's on the field. He's going to get a better passer. And, we kind of seen what he's done with shitty passing with Justin Fields. So I think I like Mason Taylor.
Yeah, for sure. At least on a 1-week sample, I think the big thing with Mason Taylor is the matchup. They've got the Bengals. Pat Freiermuth just kind of out of nowhere absolutely fried the Bengals on Thursday night.
John Smith scored against him too.
Yeah, so I mean the Bengals give it up to tight. I mean they give it up to everybody, but to tight ends especially. And if the Jets are going to, I haven't seen injury updates on Garrett Wilson yet, so I have no clue what his status looks like for this weekend. But if they're going to be without Garrett Wilson again, maybe they decide the easy button's Mason Taylor instead of trying to throw to the corpse of Allen Lazard out there. And Allen Lazard and Josh Reynolds as your wide receiver 1 and 2 in the big 20-25, man. Like, what a world we live in.
Right.
That's just abysmal.
Yeah,
I like Taylor. I think the other one, too, here that I like that is the last name mentioned in that article from Henry is Gadsden. And the thing with Gadsden is I think he's just an athletic freak. He's, 6'5", 236, probably – more of a tweener, but, he was praised in the offseason. Harbaugh said, hey, I like the way that kid gets out there and blocks. So he's kind of just earning his way onto the field. He's kind of, he was inactive, healthy scratch the first 2 weeks, played 26% of the snaps against the Broncos in week 3. And every week his snaps has gone up. His targets have gone up. His yards have gone up. And then, this week he gets his first NFL touchdown. So I think he's kind of quickly playing his way onto the field, kind of getting out there and ahead of Will Dissly. And I can't remember who the other tight end, Tyler Conklin. That's it for the Chargers.
But to your point there, real quick, just so I can interject, this Chargers offensive line has been really banged up. If we're getting good blocking out of a tight end, why, he's going to be on the field to at least block. So you get, you put him in situations where you get to those second and longs, you get to those third and longs, you get into these passing downs, and you're getting a guy who can chip and run. Gadsden is, like to your point, he's seen that snap percentage go from 26% week 3 all the way up to 75% last week. I think he's, he's right around like that. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but like that 15 to 17 target range over the last 2 weeks, right? It feels like he's quickly becoming another mouth in this Chargers offense. And I think that kind of works against him in some way, right? There's just so many mouths to feed. But as a tight end, I don't love chasing points, but when you're looking for a tight end, how do you argue with 164 yards and a touchdown?
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to just chase like kind of fluky points, but if this was a game where he caught like 4 passes and 3 of them were like, inside the 5-yard line touchdowns, I probably wouldn't take a lot of note in it. But he was out there like getting good looks, getting looks all over the field, being used in catch and run situations. So, and I think he's that kind of athlete. Stylistically, I didn't get to scout him as a prospect. I was behind on my scouting this year, so I unfortunately never got to tight ends. But stylistically, just from a height weight perspective, and kind of being a big athletic guy, tight end kind of reminds me of maybe like I don't want to say a Tony Gonzalez because that's kind of a high bar to get to, but one of those kind of smaller guys, maybe like a Jimmy Graham kind of guy, where maybe you use him as a weapon in low red zone. Darren Waller, Evan Ingram, kind of think of those kind of guys that are maybe not hefty at the tight end position, but if can be athletes in the pass game. And with a 6'5" frame, that makes him a weapon in the red zone for sure, especially if the Chargers are going to dial stuff up for him.
Yeah, I agree. And the only other tight end that we had to talk about was Theo Johnson. I think we talked about him enough where, he's a big target for a rookie quarterback. That's always a good recipe for tight ends. He's going to continue to see red zone usage. I think Theo Johnson's fine.
He's pretty touchdown dependent. His one this week was, I know a couple of my buddies that are big Jackson Dart haters just were so angry because they were calling Jackson Dart the luckiest quarterback in football, and like he can't get away with this forever. And I'm just like, man, maybe he's good. Maybe I think that he kind of got a fluky touchdown there, and I get that. But Bo Nix got one the drive before, so we can't be blaming Jackson Dart for that.
Really fun game. That was a fun one. That's all I got, Ashton. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about. We're about to hit the 45-minute mark here. If anyone else in the chat wants to drop a quick question, let us know. Like I said, we're quickly going through football season here. It's up in Wisconsin here. It's starting to get cold out. It's really starting to feel like football weather. I got some chili going the other day, which is awesome. I love chili. I love chili in the cold. So it's football time. I'm an NBA guy, so it's fun tonight. We got the NBA starting up. I think it's a really good time for sports. We got World Series starting soon, and hockey going. So it's very fun for sports right now.
For sure. Last thing I'll kind of touch on from a fantasy football perspective. Nico Collins, concussion, Christian Kirk, hamstring injury. That's going to be the Texans without their top 2 targets. Maybe it's finally time to dial up Jaden Higgins. His unders made me some money last night, but if the choice is Jaden Higgins or Xavier Hutchinson getting on the field, hell, it could be both, especially if Collins and Kirk are both hurt. So don't be surprised. Maybe go throw Higgins on your bench. I dropped him in a league stupidly this morning, but I kind of needed a running back to pick up because I trotted out literally I don't know if you saw that tweet. I think it was from RotoWire or maybe Yahoo Sports, but it was like, here's the worst fantasy lineup you could have played this week. I started both of those running backs. So I started Bill and Trevion Henderson, which just feels great. So I got to get running back position figured out. And I thought Trevion might figure it out for me, but he's quickly losing work for whatever reason on the Patriots. I know people have said that, there's been speculation he's not learning the playbook or something like that. It is kind of nice, whether it's a situation like that or something else, to kind of have your priors confirmed coming into the season. I thought Judkins was like easily the better back between the two, and that looks pretty sharp right now.
Yeah.
I'd kill for some Quinshon Judkins in Dynasty, man.
Yeah, it's always the case too with Josh McDaniels backfield, right? There's just going to be. I know people are going to point out, like, look at Josh Jacobs. He was a workhorse guy. Everyone else just kind of sucked on that team, other than Josh Jacobs. But Josh McDaniels' offense. If you have 2 running backs that are good, they're both going to be used. They're both going to be used in different roles, right? Ramondre Stevenson is the banger, and TreVeyon Henderson is a change of pace. Like that's what it is. Again, I mentioned off the top, in the offseason, TreVeyon Henderson. Like I don't think that the Patriots are necessarily in a spot to contend for a Super Bowl, which I like. I like Drake May. I like the Patriots a lot. I mean, they have like maybe the easiest schedule in NFL history this year. I still don't think that they're in a spot to contend for a Super Bowl, and I don't know why you would throw a rookie running back out to the Wolves right away. So I like TreVeyon Henderson. I think people got way too horny on him way too quick. And I'm still a Ramondre Stevenson truther. People loved him 2 years ago, and all of a sudden hate him. He's still a good football player, man. I don't care about the fumbles.
It goes quick for running backs. You start having 1 or 2 games where you're not that efficient, and people start calling you a plotter and things like
Right.
that. I can remember those days.
Yeah.
It's just how it is, man. There are guys in the league that are legit plotters, but does it really matter? They're getting so many carries. I mean, like,
right.
Is it the most efficient thing in the world for the Lions to keep giving touches to David Montgomery? No, but Dan Campbell likes to shove that big motherfucker up into the line of scrimmage in the A gap. So, like, it just kind of is what it is. Coaches like running the ball, and they like having hammers in the run game. So as long as coaches enjoy doing that, guys like Ramondre Stevenson are going to be employed.
Yep, and that's just how it is. I mean, there's not much else to it. Tough loss for Tennessee this week. Alabama's a good football team, man.
That was one thing on Saturday that I was pretty upset about. I don't know, you probably didn't watch the game, but towards the end there, like 20 seconds left on the clock, so really inconsequential. Tennessee's down, but I personally thought Peyton Lewis kind of stretched and got in the end zone, and that would have given Tennessee plus 9.5. That would have pretty much got there on the spread, and they didn't even bother looking at the play. So I thought that was kind of trash.
I did see that, and that take is kind of around that. If sports are, I guess it's maybe
if they're going to market so much about gambling and come play at my sportsbook, come play the sportsbook, then you've got to review stuff like that. I mean, that's just
you have to make sure you're right about it.
You've got to be if you're gonna make gambling and sports betting part of your market and part of your fan base, whether you like it or not, those little things like that at the end of games, while they don't matter to the result, they matter to the people that have got money on the game.
Correct.
Luckily for me, I was insulated a little bit because I played like Tennessee, like alternate spread and like alternate under, which basically won whatever I lost back on that. So it wasn't like I was out anything, but those kind of small edges like that kind of are got to kind of go with them. I think the NFL does a good job of, no matter how far gone the game is, they kind of make sure to call it straight, call it how it is.
Yep.
We did get that kind of, I didn't see it live, but we did get that like ghost pass interference, like the ref show late in that Broncos game, which was just absurd. But
I'm chalking that one up to just a missed call.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, they're human still. No matter how much technology we put around them, sometimes like they're just going to make the wrong call. It happens.
Right. So I that Tennessee game, I kind of tuned out after the pick six right before halftime, but I was following along on my phone, whatever. I found a new game. It's much better than watching Wisconsin football. I don't know if you've seen what Wisconsin does. I don't know what gas station does it, but for every point that they score in the third quarter, they get that that percentage off of gas, or that dollar off of gas or whatever.
Okay.
Per gallon. So Wisconsin has scored 0 in back-to-back games. So everyone's, hey, thank you for a full tank of gas this week. It's been bad. This is blasphemy to say in Wisconsin. I'm not totally out on Luke Fickell. I don't think he's a horrible football coach. I don't think he's in the right system.
He was the Cincinnati guy, right?
Yeah.
That had Desmond Ridder. Yeah, okay.
He was an Ohio State guy. Like I'm not totally out on him. I think he's a fine football coach. I don't think he has the guys he has. It's just not a good marriage. Like I think he probably ends up back at like Ohio State as their offensive coordinator and goes on and wins 2 or 3 championships, and Wisconsin fans are just gonna hate him. But it is what it is. We're
kind of seeing the same thing though with like Mike McDaniel. I mean, I think at this point we can comfortably say like Mike McDaniel's just not really a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe he does become a solid one in a few years. It happens all the time. Guys get their first head coach job as an OC or as a coordinator, and they're just not ready for it, I guess.
In the nuts.
I've been joking with my friends that are Titans fans all week about, I hope you guys are ready for Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel at offensive coordinator, which would be great. I think if Tennessee could pull that off, they're not going to, because they probably have the worst owner in the NFL outside of maybe the Browns, which, fun fact, he's from Tennessee. So shout out Jimmy Haslam.
Yeah, he's bought minority stake in the Milwaukee Bucks, and he's absolutely destroying that franchise. But that's a different.
That's what the Haslams do. They got that gas station money. They made the Pilot Flying J truck stop empire, and now they're ruining your favorite sports team. So
yep. That's what I got. Anyone else? Any questions? Leave them. Drop them in the comments of wherever you find it: YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. If you find it anywhere else, let us know, because that's kind of fun. If we end up on kind of the corners of the internet, who knows? But we'll get to
on the Chinese's TikTok. I forget what the Chinese TikTok's called, but
right. The Kijiji. No,
yeah,
I think that might be like their Craigslist. Whatever. But I'm on the internet too much. But we'll answer all the questions. We'll be here the rest of the week giving fantasy football advice. We're hitting this halfway mark of the season. We're really getting into football now. So let's hope that you're at least over 500. If you're 7-0, congratulations. Right, it feels like you already have a playoff spot. But stay tuned for more stuff. FlurrySport.org. We got a bunch of stuff coming out this week. We might get some NBA betting stuff coming out too. So if you're an NBA bettor, stay tuned for that. With that being said, Ashton, as always, we'll be back next week, and have a good week, everyone. Let's win some money on football this week.